So I hope you enjoyed your Christmas, however you chose to spend it. And now I hear some people actually talking about their New Year resolutions. And I also have read that on average New Year resolutions, any changes we try and make, don't last much longer than a month or two, which is a bit sad, isn't it, really? Because we can often spend a lot of time reflecting over the last year and thinking of what we really want to change and writing it all down, and then it doesn't work. It doesn't follow through, and the changes are not made, and then we come to the next year and find that we're in the same boat. So I was just going to pass on a few tips that might help you when you do want to come to make changes, that I've sort of learnt over the years, because I took a counselling course, 3-year course, over 30 years ago now, and so have done extensive reading about the mind and incorporated a lot into my own life. Basically, I think one of the biggest things that will help you all in choosing your New Year resolutions and in making sure that they actually work is to understand that I read a book by a scientist called Bruce Lipton. It was called The Biology of Belief. And he said that effectively in the first 7 years of our lives, our minds generally only work through what's called theta waves, which is a bit like being in a hypnotic state. So if you imagine a little baby, I think even before that in the womb, just hearing anything that's a sort of repeated message from a parent or early caregiver, anybody who's had a strong influence in those first 7 years. Buddy, stop eating sheep's poo. And it's a bit like an animal imprint, only of course ours carries generations and generations of great clarity that's passed on to us, but also an awful lot of dysfunction that has just been passed on to us and become normalised within our family. It's our particular blueprint for life that we've made normal, but it's very different to how other people live, and some of it really doesn't serve us. There can be beliefs and habits and ways of looking at life that have been passed down over so many generations that are on repeat, and we end up in having the same weak areas in our lives where we're not thriving and we're not doing so well. So when we come to want to change these stubborn areas that might have been problematic for many years, and we're making our New Year's resolutions, it's important to remember that in this first 7 years of our minds only working through theta waves, we've had very significant, deeply embedded beliefs passed into our hard drive, imprinted into our minds about how to live life, how to navigate life, how to meet our needs, what to think about love, how to manage our finances, just about every area you can think of that's come as constant, repetitive messages. And then when parents or early caregivers would be distant or uncomfortable if you behaved in a way that was contrary to how they'd been raised. It's often quite subtle in the sense that everything's all wrapped up with love and belonging and the attention we got. And so we have to, as young babies and children, learn to navigate our way around these very early, strong influences in order to meet our needs for love and warmth and closeness and positive attention. And in so doing, that becomes our blueprint, our version of normal. So now, when you want to change one of those inherited imprints that isn't serving you, you can just see what you're up against. And so I just read a couple of days ago about what actually happens in your nervous system, because all these early beliefs and feelings, even the atmosphere in your home, go firstly as a young baby into the nervous system and child, and then into the mind. Because if you can imagine, as a young baby, you can't think or evaluate or compare when you're in a hypnotic state. It just goes straight into the nervous system. And so as an adult, you can know exactly what you want to change. You can read a multitude of books, but still be stuck. Because what you're trying to change is logged in the nervous system as your survival. It's logged in your nervous system as the way to lead your life, and to go against it comes up as a massive threat to you. So just understand that when you're trying to make these deep-seated changes, it isn't going to be easy. You have to be kind to yourself, and you have to understand what you're up against. And if you do, you've got a little bit of a map to understand what's going on when you hit that resistance and want to go back to how you were. So basically, when we have deeply held beliefs in our nervous system for many, many years, and you try and change them, initially there'll be a reaction in our nervous system as if you're actually under a physical threat, which will then in turn trigger a stress response. At the same time, your poor mind is trying to get its head around this new information that you're trying to actually install, this new way of behaving that you're trying desperately to put into practice. So massive conflict in the mind and body going on. Massive conflict. So just understand that. That's what's happening. That'll give you one sort of a bit of a foot on the ground, a bit of a map. So these well-established pathways have become so tied to your identity as well, and how you've learnt to meet your needs, and will have established themselves so well into your neural pathways in the mind over such a long period of time. They're wrapped up with your identity. Oh, I don't dance. I've never danced. I just don't do that. I don't do this. I don't do that. It's not, I just don't do it. Have you heard those? No, it's not my kind of thing. You hear many people talk about that, and secretly they desperately want to do those things, but it's just been a no-go area, frowned upon, installed in the nervous system that you just don't do things like that, otherwise you don't get attention and love. So when you try to change these deeply ingrained beliefs that are so tied to your identity, the brain's emotional processing center becomes highly active. And it interprets all this new information as a threat to your established sense of self and your identity. And it actually triggers the fight or flight response. Can you imagine that? And then we wonder why our New Year's resolutions fail so quickly. All this is going on in your body and your mind. Stress hormones then surge, causing muscles to tighten, and the mind shifts from its open state to a defensive one, which of course then makes it much harder to absorb any new way of behaving. You've got a block going on there. So I just thought, if you know these things, you have got to understand that you've got to really be very kind to yourself. Best to take small steps, make small changes, and then the mind can actually see that as a win. It doesn't see it as a failure, it sees it as a positive, and then you can build on it. A bit like a baby, having all those repetitive messages from parents about how to behave and how not to behave. You're going to have to be the parent installing the new programs. Helpful very often to ask somebody to be able to check in with, but not to make them responsible for any change you want to make, because that's doomed to fail. You kind of want them to take over, but they're likely to be at the end of all your angst and annoyance at trying to change as well, so it's not a fair position to put anybody in, and it doesn't help you make the important changes that you want to make. So good to have people to check in with, but that's all. Check in with them, be accountable, but don't make them responsible. And as my counselling tutor once said, when you want to make a change, make it meaty but manageable. So go for smaller chunks of change that are heading in the direction of a big change, and keep at it. Consistency is the key. Knowing why it's so hard is another key. Consistency, building new neural pathways. The old ones are so well established. The new ones are like a little shoot under the ground, a new bud trying to come up. You've got to nurture it carefully and keep on every day. 30 days consistently, and then build on that. And understand that you've got to really want this change and why you want it for yourself. And you want it because your old established imprinted ones aren't serving you in certain areas. And you could have a very different life if you did change these things. And I can only say I have changed many of mine, and my goodness, you won't see immediate results, but you will definitely be so glad that you made these changes, because when you do see the changes starting to take effect and the responses from other people changing as you change, and new paths opening up and new doorways and new people coming into your life, you will be so grateful that